welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all doing really well, or as well as can be. So this week marks the start of our property series. Property is something, it's a real love of mine, so I'm really excited to share this with you. So far it's going to be a 3-week series. The first week, i.e. this week, we're going to be covering just the basic terminology, basic lingo that's used in the property world, just so that coming up when I'm talking in different videos, that if I make reference to something, that you'll know what it is. So this is sort of just setting the foundation. We'll be breaking down some quite basic words, just so that we're all on the same page. It's a no judgment zone. Like, I'll be defining what a mortgage is. We're starting from scratch. It's fine. Next week, I believe we're looking at my biggest mistakes that I made in property when I was buying my first home, and then the best things I did, the most helpful things that I did, the tips that I would encourage you guys to do. So that's just basically what I'm looking at covering. If there's anything that you would like me to cover, drop a comment below and I will add another week. So let's just get straight into it. I'll be looking down a lot because some things I've actually written the definition down. So yeah, excuse me for that. The first word that we're going to look at is mortgage. Now, some people may think that obviously we know what a mortgage is, but like I said, no judgment zone. Not everybody does. Some people don't need to know what a mortgage is, so I'm going to help. A mortgage is basically, the definition, I find it quite confusing, so I'm going to put the definition somewhere, but in my words, in layman's terms, it's a loan from a bank to purchase a property. Now, you will make monthly repayments on this loan. It's usually over a long period of time, and there is usually interest that you're paying over this period of time as well. If you do not make your repayments, then you will lose your house. They will take the house, they will repossess the house because of how the legal agreement is structured. If you do not make your payments, they then have rights to the house. So that's what a mortgage is. Now, a mortgage isn't the only way to buy a house. You can have bridging finance or a bridging loan. And a bridging loan is a high interest, short-term loan. So some people use bridging loans when they're going to an auction, when you have like a short time frame to complete. It's usually like a stepping stone to a longer term solution. But if for whatever reason you needed to buy a house ASAP, or you wanted to pose as a cash buyer, like you needed access to funds very quickly, a bridging loan is good for that. And again, if you don't pay the repayments, the charges against the house, like they just take the house. Yeah, so a bridging loan, you can have a bridging loan, that term can be like 2 weeks up to like 3 years. It's a mortgage, we're looking at like 25 years, 30 odd years. A bridging loan, 2 weeks, as little as 2 weeks you can have that for. So it is like a bridge. It gets you from point A to B. So no money, long-term solution of money. That's what the bridging finance is for. A deposit. So your deposit is basically your contribution, your hard-earned cash contribution to the purchase of a property. So it's usually a specific percentage of your purchase price. So if it's a residential, you're looking at probably around 10% of the purchase price. If it's a buy-to-let property, you're looking at probably around 25%. God knows what's going to happen with the percentages post-COVID, but that's kind of like the ballpark. A deposit is a percentage of the purchase price that you are physically putting in. This isn't money that you're borrowing from the bank or a mortgage lender. It's your hard-earned cash sitting in your bank. A lot of times they'll actually ask for proof of funds when you make an offer on a place, because that deposit is your money. It's cash money. And then we've got LTV. Now, LTV stands for loan to value. This is the ratio of loan to the value, the ratio of the loan to the value of the house. So again, this is another percentage of the purchase price. So if you have a 75% loan to value, that means that the mortgage is 75% of the purchase price. So I did actually get an A in maths, but I don't know how, because I'm going to try and do an example. Maybe I should have thought of this before. Oh well, here we are. If the purchase price is £100,000, if is a random figure, if it's £100,000, I'll do 80% because that's easy. Right, and your loan to value, the mortgage loan to value is 80%, then what you know is that the mortgage is going to be for £80,000 because that loan to value is 80%. So 80% of the value, the purchase price, is £80,000. We can look at your deposit. Your deposit will then be 20% because your deposit makes up the shortfall. So your deposit would then be 20 grand, 20% in my nice round figures example. So deposit, the percentage of cash money that you've got in your bank. Loan to value, the percentage that you're going to borrow, the amount that you're going to borrow. And then when it comes to repaying your mortgage, you have two options. You can have an interest only, and this is when you literally, at the end of the term of your mortgage, you are going to still owe how much you borrowed, because every month you've just been paying the interest. So whether it's a 2, 3, 4% interest rate, that's what you've been paying every month. So if you've got if you say our £80,000 mortgage, you've been paying your interest every month. At the end of the 25 years or 30 years or whatever, you will still owe 80% of the mortgage because you have just been paying off the interest. However, with a repayment mortgage, you are chipping away at that £80,000. So every month, as well as paying the interest, you are also paying a proportion of the loaned amount, so that by the end of the mortgage term, you've completely paid off the mortgage. So usually for residential properties, we go for repayment options because that's your home. You don't really want to be in a position, you're not planning on selling it. You want to be able to live stress-free when you've completed the term of the mortgage. Business properties are usually, like rental properties, are usually done on interest only because it's sort of like it's a business. We're usually going to remortgage or we're usually going to sell. And actually, I'll just say what a remortgage is. No, I'm going to follow my lead. Sorry. So then we have a freehold. So when you are looking at properties, you may notice that they've got freehold and there's leasehold. Freehold is when you own the land and the structure of the property. So the land that the house is built on is when it's freehold. When you own that, you have the title deed to that land and the structure of the property. That's freehold. You own it all. But then leasehold, you don't own the land. So you own sort of like the section. This is usually like blocks of flats. So you don't own the land and you don't actually own the structure, but you own your portion of that building. So you own the flat. You will usually be paying a service charge because you need to pay for the maintenance, and it's like rent, ground rent kind of thing for the land. You're borrowing the land. And these leasehold agreements, they can be from like 999 years, and then they get lower and lower. Obviously, as the years go down, they get lower. So it's with leasehold properties, it's really important to make sure that you check how long is left on the lease, because that will also affect your mortgage lender's happiness about that. You may well need to be in positions. If you find a house or a flat that is like ridiculously cheap, is in good working order and ridiculously cheap, check the lease, because sometimes that is why it's got either no lease, it's like basically like 20 odd years. That's basically nothing. and so it will cost a lot of money to extend that lease or renew that lease. Don't get caught up, but they're obliged to tell you anyway, but make sure you, if it's a leasehold property, you want to know, and you will be asked this anyway, how long is left on the lease. Then you can buy a property off plan. So off plan basically refers to new builds when the house isn't actually built yet. You are literally buying it off plan. This is what they plan to do, and you say, yeah, I want this house, and you point to it on the paper because it's not built yet. That's off plan. Stamp duty land tax is tax. It's a pain in the behind, but is tax. You know, there's not much you can do about that. When you start to, on your second property, second, third, fourth, fifth, however many you want to go, you're getting a bit higher in what you pay. Sorry, but yeah, stamp duty is a tax. It's compulsory. I think there is a threshold though, that you don't have to pay up to a certain point, but at the end of the day, stamp duty is a tax. Equity is the difference in the difference between the true market value of a house or a property and the outstanding mortgage balance. Sorry. So if your mortgage is 80,000 and your house is worth 100,000, the equity is 20 grand, because that's how much value you've got that isn't owed to the mortgage lender. You can have negative equity when your mortgage is 80,000 but your house is worth 60,000. You are now in negative equity because you owe more than the house is even worth. And so when you remortgage is basically renewing the agreement. And why you do that is because when you get a mortgage, you can get like a fixed rate for 2 or 5 years, or I think some even do 7. And when that term comes up, you may well want to remortgage again to get onto another fixed rate, interest rate. And so you can then remortgage either at the amount that you now owe if you've been making repayments, or if the property has gone up in value or you've got some equity, you can then remortgage for a different amount, allowing you to pull some money out of the property. And then we have BMV. This is below market value. This is basically when you're able to purchase a property for below market value, whether it be because it needs a lot of work doing or whatever the reason is, or the owner is just very motivated and wanting to get rid of it, so it is giving you a crazy deal. It's below market value. ROI is return on investment, and that is basically your annual profit divided by the total money that you've put into the project, whether that be the deposit, the refurb costs, all of that. So annual profit divided by total investment times 100, and that will give you the percentage of your return on investment. And then you have yield. A lot of estate agents talk about yield, and that is your gross rent divided by your purchase price times 100. I prefer to look at return on investment rather than annual yield, yield, because it's a bit more of a indicative or a true reflection on the return on your investment. Yield doesn't take into account any refurb. Yield doesn't take into account your money in, that the money that you've put in, like the purchase price is, your deposit and the loan from the bank. I prefer looking at the return on investment. And then these two are HMO, house of multiple occupancy. So that's basically when you have, I think it's like 3 or more, or is it 4 or more? I think it's 3 or more, 3 or 4 or more people from different families living under one roof. So it's basically when you rent a house out by the room, or a building out by the room. That's what a house of multiple occupancy is. When then it's not one big family all living together, it's strangers living under the same roof. And an AST, that's an assured short hold tenancy, and that tenancy agreement, sorry, and that's just your standard rental contract. So if you are renting your home, you are more than likely on an AST, and that's just the common legal agreement used for rental properties. I believe that that is all the terms that I could think of for this video. I really thought this was going to be like a 6-minute video. Maybe I chat too much, sorry about that, guys. But yeah, that's it. I hope you found it useful, and comment, like, subscribe so that you can keep posted when the next videos are up. Wednesdays, I think, are our days now, so hopefully we can stick to that going forward. See you next week. Bye. So I forgot one more. Due diligence is basically the amount of research that you should do before undertaking the purchase of a property. So that would be looking at the area, how close the property is to the local amenities, how close it is to the stations. If it's a rental property, the potential tenants that would be in the area, who's in that area. Is it an area where good schools are? Is it in a family area? Is it a business area? Just doing your due diligence, your in-depth research into the area. And that's it from me. See ya.